Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, a little bit of television, some other stuff here and there. And we are, of course, joined by the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how are you doing today, sir?
John, I'm doing fantastic, although it's getting harder and harder to breathe because of the air here.
You know what, though? Good news. Good news. I actually noticed like a couple of days ago, the air index is like at 196, which is the worst since I've ever been in LA. But then yesterday it dropped to 140. And then this morning, and I double checked it, it dropped to good. It dropped to 40. It dropped from 140 to 40 today. So we were actually able to go out for a walk this morning and actually not smell smoke in the air. It was like actually the first decent day. So I don't know if the winds changed or whatever, but it was nice to get out of the house. Yeah, over in Pasadena. Oh, is it in Pasadena still?
Yeah, and the Mount Wilson Observatory is still under threat, and there's like $1 billion of towers up there, communications towers of all kinds that are still being threatened. It's crazy and apocalyptic.
Yeah, it is nutty stuff these days. And guys, I hope you are all taking care of yourselves and doing well wherever it is you are. And listen, this is how today's show is going to go. We got a number of main topics we need to talk about off the top. And then in the second half of the show, we're just going to dedicate to taking your live comments and questions. How do you get on a live comment or question? It's really easy. Just use the tip link that's in the top of the description of this video. You can just click on it there or enter it manually, streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your question or comment on the show if it's within reason. And of course, you'll be supporting the show at the same time. With that there down, we've got a couple things to talk about here off the top. And the first thing I want to talk about off the top is kind of an homage to you guys. Because, you know, one of the common running themes on this show is I'm constantly getting great recommendations from you guys of things I should check out. Even sometimes things I thought looked stupid and I was never going to watch. Doom Patrol, and now I love it. Harley Quinn, the animated series, had no interest. You guys kept telling me to watch it. I watched it. Now I love it. Add another one to that list. For the last couple of days, a bunch of you guys have been telling me about this new show on Apple Plus with Jason Sudeikis called Ted Lasso. I had honestly, even before you guys, it's not that I was never intending on watching it, it's that I had never even heard of it till you guys started telling me about it. So yesterday, my wife Ann and I, we decided, let's sit down and let's like watch the first episode of Ted Lasso. Let's sit down and watch the first episode of Ted Lasso. We binged every episode that there was. I think they were up to 8. We binged every single episode that they had so far of Ted Lasso. This show is delightful. You guys have got to try this Ted. If you have Apple TV Plus, I'm not sure it's a show that you get Apple TV Plus just for this one show, but you've got Morning Show, you've got For All Mankind, and now you've got this as well. This is a show worth checking out. It starts off, Rob, like the first episode, I was a little iffy on, I'll be honest with you. It's like, this seems a little cliche, seems a little bit silly, but it just really establishes the characters. And then once you get into episode 2 and 3, I was hooked. Like I was absolutely hooked. It's charming. It's heartfelt. Like it's not a dark show like, you know, Sons of Anarchy or Breaking Bad or whatever. It is just a charming, delightful, and most importantly, funny show. Now, Rob, I was asking you beforehand if you had a chance to check this out yet, but you haven't seen it. But have you seen any of the marketing for it at all?
No, I mean, I vaguely, you know, I know that the show existed, but I don't know anything about it beyond that. So you bringing it up, I mean, look, you turned me on to Letterkenny one time, you know, and
I remember that.
I was like, what is it called? And then I was like, that shit was the funniest stuff. I couldn't believe how funny that show was. And, you know, I guess not coming from Canada. So I when you told me today how much you loved the show, that you binged it all, you were going to watch an episode, I'm like, okay, well, if you liked it, that goes to the top of the list. I got to check that out now.
Well, and more importantly than me liking it, it really is that I had so many people in the live chat telling me I really had to check it out. And again, the first episode, it's cute. The first episode's cute. Don't get me wrong. It's not like the first episode's bad, but I watched the first episode. I'm like, okay, it's all right. I mean, it's charming. It's got some laughs. It's pretty charming. All right. But really, is this what everybody's raving about? And then it built on all that, and I just loved it. So guys, I just wanted to start off today's show by really giving you my wholehearted recommendation of what a bunch of other people on this in the live chat we're talking about. Do check out Ted Lasso when you get the chance. I think you will be glad that you did. All right. With that down, let's do one more thing off the top. And the one more thing off the top is this. You know, there's a movie that's been in development and finally underway that has been the source of some controversy for some people. Some people think it sounds great. Some people think it sounds bad. A lot of other people are just kind of taking a wait and see approach. And that's for the new Uncharted project. Now, Uncharted, you know, caused a bit of a stir at first because they cast Tom Holland. Tom Holland, who is very popular right now, but not the age or maybe the current image that a lot of people think of when they think of Nathan Drake, right? So some people liked the news, some people didn't like the news, what have you. Then Mark Wahlberg joined, which was interesting because for years, Mark Wahlberg was attached to be in Uncharted as Nathan Drake. But instead now, he finally joins this movie, but he comes in as Sully instead. He's going to play Sully. Well, the movie is now actually shooting. They've got this movie now up and running. It's actually shooting. And we've actually got our first kind of peek at, you know, at Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg on set. These are obviously not official releases, but we see them in suits and all that kind of stuff. Now, it's interesting. If you look back at, I don't know if this is a direct connection or not, but if you look at Uncharted 4, Thief's End, where they really introduce young Nathan Drake, there's a scene in that where they kind of sneak into like some kind of art auction sort of thing where they get dressed up in that. I don't know if these pictures are direct relation to that was in the game, or if it's just a totally different thing altogether. But it's not the pictures you expect to see. You expect to see some jungle adventure going on, right? But these are the pictures. Remember, these are not officially released by the studio. These are just the pictures that somebody snapped on set and released. So it's kind of interesting. The big news to me here is just that the movie's officially shooting, Rob. I mean, that's the thing. This has been literally a 7 or 8 year journey to get this movie actually going and in front of the cameras. And now here it is. With it now shooting, I'm sure it's going to re-spark the debate about whether this is even a movie, you know, they should be making right now. I'm still of the belief that I like the casting of Tom Holland. Tom Holland is in his mid-20s. He's a terrific actor. I think going with somebody that young gives them this is a guy who could play Nathan Drake for the next 15 years. Without any problems. Without any problems, he could play Nathan Drake for the next 15. For the next, if you wanted to, for the next 30 years, for sure. I just think it's going to be interesting. So I think this is pretty cool. Rob, you see that this is a movie that after all the years of development and the director changes and the casting changes, like this is like 8 years in the making. Here it is now, it's actually shooting. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I actually am always happy to see these kinds of things because it means the producers, the studio, the actors, many people that carry the torch for certain projects that are passion projects or projects they really want to do. I love seeing that because it's far easier to scrap projects after a time, unless they're, you know, sometimes projects have been in development for so long. There's so much money against them that it becomes really difficult to actually put them into production because they've already been so expensive when nothing's been made. So it's really great to see this happen. And I love seeing, to me, these kinds of things are a win. I've told you before on the show, I love the Uncharted games. When I played the first Uncharted, it was the first video game I ever sat down and I played it from beginning to end. It took me like 13 or 14 hours. I was so obsessed with the characterization, the storytelling, the cutscenes. I was so involved with the characters. It was the first time I felt like I was actually playing a movie. So I'm rooting for this movie, man. I want it to be great. I'm hoping it's going to be great. You know, the video game movie curse, it's not like we've ever really got a great one. But I think if there truly could be a transcendent great video game movie, this could be the one. I'm excited for this, man. I'm putting all my hopes and dreams into this film.
I agree. I think out of all of them that are out there right now, Uncharted is the best positioned to truly break the curse. I mean, we've had some, like the last Tomb Raider movie was actually not bad. I thought the Tomb Raider movie we just recently got a couple of years ago, I actually didn't think that one was all that bad, which is glorious praise for video game movies, I should say. But I'm not going to get my hopes too high, because there have been two other films that I was convinced twice before would be the film to break the video game curse. One was Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, me too.
And that is like an all-time awful movie. And then the other one that I was convinced was going to break the curse was Warcraft. Which, by the way, the star Warcraft from Vikings is now in that show on HBO Max, Raised by Wolves. He's one of the stars of that thing. And I actually didn't mind Warcraft. There are elements about Warcraft that did work for me, but clearly not the movie that was going to break the curse. And so now we've got the next one up to bat, which is
this one. Why do you think
one.
that is? Why, John, is it so hard to translate a video game into a movie?
I think my personal opinion is that there are two things. One is the not as important thing, but one is just the art of adaptation. You know, I think sometimes we've seen filmmakers try too hard to force elements of the game into the movie that just don't work for a movie. And they kind of get lost in this battle of how do we please the fans of the game while also trying to figure out how to make a good movie, when really they should just be focused on trying to make a good movie, period. Because that'll make everybody happy. Like Civil War, Captain America Civil War is a great example of that. Kevin Feige didn't worry about sticking true to the comic books at all. They said, let's just make a great movie and keep the same themes, and it made everybody happy. Winning cures everything. You put out a great movie, everybody forgives anything else. But I think the second reason is probably the most predominant reason. It's really hard for them to make a good video game movie because it's really hard to make a good movie at all. And I think when you combine those two things, I mean, Kevin Feige has kind of ruined everything for a lot of people, because Kevin Feige has made it look like it's easy. Like with the MCU and everything, everybody now just thinks, it's easy to make a great comic book movie. Really? Because 40 years of Hollywood history would suggest otherwise. But I mean, that is the thing. He's kind of made it look easy. So I think when you look at the combination of the art of adaptation is very, very difficult, combined with the fact that it's just hard to make a good movie at all. But yeah, because you're talking about a genre that's like 0 for 30 or something like that. What do you see as being the main culprit of trying to make like a really great audience critic, everybody beloved like video game property?
Well, it's interesting because, I think people get caught up in the fact that it's actually a game, when really they should just concentrate on the fact that it's a story. Like, you could look at all of these games, the single play mode. It's a story. It's laid out. And if you forget that it's a game and you just think of it as a story and go, okay, here's the beginning of the story. Here are the plot points. You can go on YouTube. Somebody will have made a cutscene and a playthrough of it. So you break it down and forget it's a game and just treat it like a story. And I think so often, like you pointed out, they're always trying to work in things about the gameplay and all that. And I'm like, that just doesn't. It doesn't work. And I think they get caught up. It's kind of like, the reason that comic book movies, I think, were so hard to adapt is because people looked at them as comic books first and stories second.
Great point.
They didn't. They're like, this is just a comic book. It doesn't have to be realistic. We don't have to make. That's why you got Reb Brown and Captain America. The suits, you go back and you look at like the Thor from the Incredible Hulk, it's like no verisimilitude. But once you take comic books and you think of them as the same kind of source material as, say, Pride and Prejudice, a classic novel, they're both stories, and forget about the mediums they came from. And I think that's the problem with video game movies is they have to do what they did with comic books and treat them as stories and forget the medium they originated in, because that's not a movie anyway. So who cares? Take the story, adapt the story. Nathan Drake is a great character. Trust in that. Trust in the story and trust in the character, as always.
Right. I like what you're saying there. All right, guys. Question is, what do you think about this? We've now got Uncharted is actually in front of the cameras. It is shooting. We got Mark Wahlberg, Tom Holland finally on set shooting it. What are your feelings about it right now? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down and out of the way, let's move into our first main topic today. And how do we select our main topics here in the John Campea Show? It's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by simply going anytime, 24/7. If you've got a big topic you think should be a main topic here, go to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. It's totally free. Fill it out, hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you may see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get into main topic number 1, shall we? And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Paul Epstein. And Paul Epstein writes, "Hey, John and Rob / Aaron." It's Rob today. Where did we go here? Hey, John, Rob / Aaron. Very quickly, Taika Waititi has become one of my favorite filmmakers in the world. Me too, man. Between What We Do in the Shadows, Thor Ragnarok, and Jojo Rabbit, it seems like he can do anything. Did you see the report that he's now doing a pirate show for HBO Max called Our Flag Means Death? I think it sounds amazing, but do you think this will interfere with his plans to do a Star Wars movie? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, Taika Waititi, simply one of the most exciting filmmakers going right now. Like, he just knows how to make powerful yet extremely entertaining entertainment. He's just absolutely fabulous at it. And now he's just signed up for his next project. He's going to be a producer and he's going to be a director. He's going to be directing the pilot episode, as well as being an executive producer on Our Flag Means Death for HBO Max. This comes to us from the folks over at The Hollywood Reporter, who writes, HBO Max is getting into the Taika Waititi business. The Warner Media-backed streamer has handed out a straight-to-series order to Our Flag Means Death, a period comedy loosely based on the adventures of, I don't know how to pronounce this, Steady Bonnet, a pampered aristocrat who abandoned his life of privilege to become a pirate. This is actually a true story, which is actually really kind of fascinating.
I want to be him.
I want to be him. Created by showrunner David Jenkins, Waititi will executive produce and direct the pilot. Waititi will turn his attention to the HBO Max series after he completes production on Marvel's Thor: Love and Thunder, which he is writing and directing. All right. I got to tell you, this sounds like something that is right up Taika Waititi's alley to me. This sounds like it is right up his alley. This is so in his wheelhouse. Do something fantastical and exciting and fun, and also making it really funny. The premise sounds absolutely perfect for him. This sounds like a no-brainer. This sounds like a win. This is a show I want to watch. And by the way, if I just read the synopsis and they didn't mention Taika Waititi, this is a show I'd be really interested in anyway. I'm all in. I mean, this sounds great. And you add Taika Waititi to that mix? Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. This is a project that he is key for. As far as what does this do? Because they're saying that after he's done Thor Ragnarok, a lot of people have assumed that once he's done Thor Ragnarok, he's going to spin off and start working on this Star Wars movie that they announced that he was going to be making for Lucasfilm. Now they're saying he's going to finish Thor: Love and Thunder and spin out and do this pirate show. How will that impact, or how will it affect what he's doing for Star Wars? The answer to that is it's probably not going to affect it at all. It's probably not going to have any impact in the least. Number one, there was nothing saying that he is at the point that he is ready to really start putting in all the work on the Star Wars movie he wants to do as soon as he's done Thor: Love and Thunder. More importantly, though, is that although he is an executive producer on this show, he's not the showrunner. He's not going to be working day in and day out with this show. He's going to be an executive producer on it. He's going to direct the pilot. He's going to direct the first one, which is super important. That first episode is the one that sets the tone for the rest of the series. We've spoke about that before. But as far as time commitment, this is minimal compared to a feature film. So I would ultimately guess that although he is doing it right after Thor, I really don't think this is going to involve whatever his plans are or interfere with whatever his plans are for the next Star Wars movie in the least. I really don't think it's going to be a player in that at all. So overall, I love the sound of this, Rob. I think this sounds great to me, and I really don't think it's going to interfere with the Star Wars stuff, whatever that may be in the least. Rob, you heard about this story. What do you make of it?
Bring it on. I mean, remember, TV isn't like movies. And obviously, if this is going to be a pilot and it's about a pirate, it's probably going to be pretty complex. They'll probably shoot it for something like a month. But, it's a movie takes a year, 2 years to make. A Star Wars movie takes 2 years to make. I think he can fit both in. I think now you're seeing directors are doing this kind of stuff. They're being Taika Waititi. I mean, isn't he in Free Guy too? Like he's acting in Free Guy.
Yes, he is. Yeah, but that's
he's making
done.
Academy Award nominated films. He's doing this, he's doing that, he's producing What We Do in the Shadows. I mean, if you want to stay busy, John, you know how it is. You're producing a movie, you're doing daily YouTube content, you find the time and you make it work.
Yeah, and he's doing it. But I think the show sounds fabulous. I mean, I really do.
I hope he plays the guy. Is he supposed to play? I guess he.
No, no, they're not saying, because that would be that suddenly turns a minimal time commitment into a very significant time commitment. But you're right. I hadn't even thought of it. You're right. He would be perfect to play an aristocrat who becomes a pirate.
I mean, that to me is what a dream role for anybody to play.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Question is for you guys. What do you think about the sounds of Our Flag Means Death being executive produced and at least the pilot being directed by Taika Waititi? We think it sounds great. Maybe you think it sounds silly. That's fine. Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Kyle Arking. And Kyle Arking writes, did you read the Variety article stating that Black Widow may move once again and that Soul may move to Disney+? If this happens, I am more worried for Soul given that Disney+ hasn't had the best track record, although I love the one and only Ivan. At this point, I'm no longer trusting release dates until I'm watching the movie. What are your thoughts? All right, man, thanks a lot for sending that in. And yep, you know what? You can count on it. It's like taking it to the bank. A couple days ago, they released a new magazine cover of Black Widow, and I say, you know what? I wouldn't bet a lot of money on it, but I've got a feeling Black Widow is going to keep its release date. I got a feeling Black Widow. I mean, I wouldn't bet money on it. Certainly it may move, but you know what? I'm feeling like Black Widow's going to keep its release date. Fast forward 48 hours. Fast forward 48 hours, and like clockwork, we get the following from the folks at Variety. Disney will likely, remember, it's not official yet, but Disney will likely delay Black Widow, the superhero adventure from Marvel that was slated to open on November 6th, according to multiple individuals with knowledge of the situation. The studio is also exploring various release options for Pixar's existential cartoon, Soul. The animated kids film is still scheduled to release on November 20th, but it's unlikely to move forward with those plans. The studio is even considering releasing on Disney+, but, and this is key, a Disney insider disputed claims that Soul was moving to Disney+. So yes, there are some rumblings and some whispers and some rumors suggesting that Soul might be moving to Disney+, but Variety is quick to point out that they have a Disney insider who is disputing that. So what's happening with Soul? Don't know. But that's not really what I'm focused on right now. What I'm focused more on is this movie that I said like 48 hours ago that I think it's going to keep its release date, Rob. Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to keep, well, maybe not. Now, it's important to point out that they're not saying that it's been confirmed that it's moving its date. They're not, this isn't Disney that's announced it, but it is Variety. And they're saying they got multiple sources in the company that are telling them this thing is going to move. While I am mildly surprised by that, because honestly, my line of thinking, Rob, was that they were going to take advantage of the fact that Tenet volunteered to be the first penguin in the water, and Tenet volunteered to be the movie that would go out there, start raising awareness that theaters are open again, start the process of getting people back into the process of coming to the movies, blah, blah, blah. And that by the beginning of November, in could come movies like Black Widow and take advantage of all that groundwork that Tenet had done, and maybe even taken the credit that Christopher Nolan and Tenet wanted so badly for being the movie to really break it back open again. While I kind of thought that's what was going to happen, it's also not inconceivable that it does move. I mean, look, the reality is, even with Tenet being the first penguin back in the water, it's had its struggles. Now, it hasn't just been pandemic struggles. It's been struggles with people grumbling about the sound mix, and maybe the movie was too complicated. And we've talked about that ad nauseum. So it's also struggled with that. But in this era of the pandemic where everything is changing day by day, it's impossible to predict anything more than 72 hours out. It's not, I'm not falling out of my chair about this. I still think there's a chance it holds on to that November 6th release date, but it is looking more and more likely that it moves. One of the questions that this does bring up, though, Rob, is that we know how almost obsessively interconnected Kevin Feige likes his properties to be. So the question then becomes, if Black Widow needs to move, will that then, by necessity, trigger a chain reaction of all the MCU stuff and having to move all the other MCU stuff as well? How much of a wrench does, if they have to move Black Widow yet again, throw into the plans of everything else? So, Rob, let's go to you on this. Number one, what do you think about this report? Do you think it's going to move? And if so, how much or how little would this complicate the rest of the MCU release schedule, do you think?
Well, first of all, it becomes academic at some point, because these movies that are expensive, 150 million, 200 million, and 250 million in the case of something like No Time to Die, if their theatrical releases aren't generating what they need to generate. I mean, Tenet at $200 million to pay for marketing, it's got to make $800 million theatrical to break even worldwide. And that $200 million is not nearly enough. And that means basically they took a film, a viable film that probably could have made a lot more money in a non-pandemic situation, and it was sacrificed. It basically, it died. And they have to figure out, how are we going to pay for this movie? Because they've borrowed money, they've been incurring interests on it. So other studios look and they're like, we can't afford to release our $150 million or $200 million films in this situation right now, because we'll go broke. I mean, we literally can't afford it, especially if we have multiple $100 million plus movie or $200 million movies on deck, which a lot of them do. Warner Brothers, remember, they have Tenet, they have Wonder Woman, and Dune. That is a huge, huge, huge investment by a lot of other people in addition to the studio. And if they're not going to make their money back, they can't just toss aside this investment. It's like burning it up with fire. So I think that's problematic. And I do think, honestly, I think Black Widow is going to move, because that's a potential $1 billion grossing movie for the studio. And are they just going to throw it out and lose that money? I mean, they can't do that. And why would you? If why leave all that money on the table? And it's just too expensive. It's worth too much money. I mean, Disney, look at what happened to Mulan. Not good. So I do think, John, they're going to have to make adjustments. However, the one thing Black Widow has going for it is that it's a prequel. So it does take place after Civil War, before Infinity War, apparently. I don't know if there's a post-credit tag or something, but I'm sure whatever happens in Black Widow, they could chalk it up to, well, it is a prequel, maybe we can fit it anywhere. I just don't know. But because it is, I think that gives it a little bit more leeway. But they might, like you said, do they push Falcon and Winter Soldier? Do they do that?
And then Eternals, Shang-Chi,
all of that's going to get
Doctor
pushed.
Strange. I mean, and here's the other problem they face, and this is one we don't talk about a lot, but there is awareness fatigue. So let's go back. I'm going to take us back in time a little bit to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's G.I. Joe movie. Now, if you remember, that movie was within 3 months of its release date. It was like within 3 months, maybe even 2 months of its release date.
Right.
They had done a ton of marketing. Of course, you got Dwayne Johnson in it, ton of marketing. Then they bumped it with like 2 months to go. They bumped it almost a year. And then when the movie came out like a year later, there was only a sliver of the enthusiasm for the movie that there had been, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, that didn't come out like a year ago. I would argue that the same sort of thing kind of happened. We often go back to Godzilla, King of the Monsters. You know, they made this big, huge pop splash at San Diego Comic-Con a year before the movie came out with this huge trailer. And then they dropped so many trailers and so many things that by the time the movie came out, I think a lot of people are like, oh, that movie hadn't come out ages ago? Really? It's still coming? And I think that had something to do with its, you know, less than optimal box office return. I think there's also something they're going to have to worry about there's a limit to how many times you can push something and how far off, because I think the more you push it, you're looking at diminishing returns, the more and more you push it. But so you're right. There's this pressure on the one end, and then there's pressure on the other end. And again, I know people get sick of hearing us saying it, but these are unprecedented times. There's no playbook here. It's not like Kevin Feige or the folks at Warner Brothers or anybody can look at, well, how was this handled before? There is none of that. There's no pre-existing example. And it almost looks like a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario for them, right? Like you push it off, there's going to be consequences. You hold firm, there could be consequences. And I don't know. Rob, let me ask you this. You're in charge right now of, let's go outside of the MCU. Let's say of Warner Brothers. You've got Wonder Woman and you got Dune coming. They're coming up. When you look at those possible threats on both sides, what do you do with those movies right now? Are you kind of saying, let's stick with where we are? Or are you saying, listen, there may be some drawbacks, but what are you doing with those movies, which are coming a little bit later than what Black Widow was supposed to do?
Look, for me, if I was running the studio, I can't take the biggest quiver, the biggest arrows in our quiver and sacrifice them at the altar of, we must open these films. We're a publicly held company. I have shareholders that are going to say, wait a minute, every MCU movie, it averages out $1 billion. Are you going to throw out Black Widow and think a $400 million gross now is acceptable? I mean, no, we should be making $800 million to $1 billion on that movie. And what you're doing right now is you're the studio executive. If you're putting movies out in the theater right now, you're the studio executive that's losing hundreds of millions of dollars for the studio. That's what you're doing. And now we do have, I have to be fair, there are other markets in the country that are in the world that are opening up, and they've been able to do a lot better with COVID than we have. But what we also need to see is we have to see patrons coming back to movie theaters. A lot of movie theaters with social distancing are still working at half capacity. So even the places that it's opening, you're getting diminishing returns no matter what. I just don't think I would ever open a movie in that environment in good conscience. You know, right. I would, especially these movies, I'd push them. I'd push them. Look, it seems to me that Universal was the smartest. You know, the Fast saga, Fast and Furious 9. Nah, we're just going to push it a year. That's it. Bye-bye. You know, and that might have been not something that anybody wanted to do, but that looks in hindsight like the smart play. Right. Because then they don't have to sit there and announce it, and they don't have to have, you know, one article after another and deadline, it moves again, blah, 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 you know, and it looks like there's not decisive. It looks like the business is being driven by outside forces. And I know you could say it always is, but it doesn't look like there's decisive leadership at the studios itself, at themselves, because they keep making these decisions like, we'll push it this long. And then, oh, sorry, can't do that. When really, they really know what they should do. They just don't want to do it.
Well, at what point though do you have to take into consideration the words of, like, say, Jared Harris in the Morbius trailer, who says, you know, at some point the cure becomes worse than the disease. Like, I mean, I think it goes more complicated too, because like if you're Marvel, right? Okay, we put out Black Widow now. We make, let's say we make $400 million less than we would have. We make $400 million less than we would have. That's catastrophic. But if we do that, we are also able to keep everything else where we wanted it to be. We don't have to do any more shifting with all these other things, which could ultimately cost us a lot. And it may just be that, I mean, if we just take Black Widow up now and move it by a year, it could be more costly for us in the long run when you look at whatever possible. But like you said, Rob, maybe there is no impact at all, but maybe there's heavy impact. Does the chain reaction of events ultimately cost us more than what it would have cost us to just keep Black Widow where it was in the first place? I mean, it's a lose-lose, but it might be, which is the least lethal poison? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But you're right, dude.
It's a tough call.
It's tough. You're absolutely right about that. So
I
the
mean,
question,
the economics involved. Sorry, there's too much money to lose. I mean, Tenet's going to be a huge box office failure.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know, but does it cost you more in the long run if you move too many things too many times? I mean, I don't know. It's so complex, and there's so much money that I just think it's a complicated situation that I have no idea what they're going to do about it. Question is for you guys. Let's say you're head of a studio. What do you do? Taking all things into consideration, what do you think the best move is? Are you surprised to hear these reports about Black Widow potentially moving? Are you going to be shocked if it doesn't move? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move into our third and final main topic today. And our third and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Tommy Doyle. And Tommy Doyle writes, John, I recently got on Twitter and saw that Madonna has pitched a biopic to Universal and that the pop star is going to direct it herself. What do you think about this news? And do you think this would open the doors for more singers making movies about themselves? All right. Thanks a lot for writing that in, man. And yes, it's not just pitched. I believe it's Universal, Rob, has picked it up. Madonna is directing and co-writing with Academy Award-winning screenwriter Diablo Cody, who I love. I love Diablo Cody. She wrote Juno. I believe that's what she won her Academy Award for, was for Juno. So Diablo Cody and Madonna are working on the script. I think they've nailed the script down of a biopic of Madonna, and Madonna herself is going to direct this movie about herself. She's not going to star in it. She's going to go out and find some talent to play in it, and Universal has greenlit it. This comes to us from Deadline, who writes, Universal Pictures has signed on to be the home for a biopic of iconic, I guess you call it autobiopic. It's more than a biopic, an autobiopic of iconic singer Madonna, who will direct her own story from a script she is writing with Oscar-winning Juno scribe Diablo Cody. Madonna will produce the film, so she's writing, directing, and producing the film. Will produce the film with Pascal Pictures, Amy Pascal. Madonna will not act in the film, but she will lead a search for a young actress who will play her in the formative stages of the disruptor's career that set the template for all the diva singers stars who have followed, from Beyonce to Lady Gaga. That comes to us from Deadline. All right. Let me get my first reaction out of the way on this, Rob. My first reaction is, listen, this wouldn't be the first autobiopic we've seen out there where somebody has made a film about themselves. This wouldn't be the first time it happened. I will admit, I cringe a little bit at the idea. Like, even when we've talked before, Rob, about certain biopics that are being done where even the estate of the person who the biopic is about has a little bit too much power. And we think, is this going to skew what the movie is going to be? Will this skew the story? Is it a little bit too much? When you've actually got the subject themselves writing, producing, and directing, and they're in total control of everything that gets said and done in the movie, to me, it makes me call into question the value of the movie. And quite frankly, it makes me not definitively just question the validity of the movie. You know,
right.
It's basically Madonna building a monument to herself. And so there is that part. There's absolutely that part. That said, on the other side of the coin, who else knew what Madonna was really thinking in those years better than Madonna does? Who else really knows the behind the doors conversations that happened better than Madonna does? Who else knows what was really the motivation behind certain things that Madonna did than Madonna does? These can all be skewed, of course, making the movie about herself, but there's those arguments to be made as well. And again, there are some examples of some autobiographical movies being made that have done pretty well. And I'll say this too. This is a biopic. I am not very big on biopics about musicians. I'm just not. I think in the grand scope of the world, they're not that important. As so much as like the person who cured polio or the person who did like whatever. But I will say this. Madonna is such a titan, a Greek god when it comes to the music industry and all that the music industry has become now. One could make the argument that if you really chart the course of the music industry and its interconnection with pop culture and everything, almost very few things were as pivotal and direction setting as the career of Madonna. Every female pop star today, you can draw all the lineage lines back to Madonna. How they were influenced, how they chose to navigate themselves, how they have mimicked the career, projections that Madonna did with her career. You can make the argument there has never been a more important female artist in the world of music history ever. And so while I am uncomfortable as a viewer with the notion, Rob, of a pop star producing, writing, directing, and having full creative control over their own story, while I am uncomfortable with that, it is outweighed to me by this is one that should get made. There are some examples of such things being done before and they work. And there are some arguments about how it could play into the authenticity of the picture that I think all that outweighs my very legitimate concerns about the person being in charge of their own thing. So I'm going to say cautiously, I'm looking forward to it. So I don't know, Rob, you heard about this thing. By the way, we're kind of brushing over the fact that Academy Award-winning screenwriter Diablo Cody is working with her on this. To me, that's huge. That shouldn't be just brushed over. But anyway, Rob, you see the story, you hear the details. What's your reaction to it?
Man, I'm in. For no other reason than this is wacky. This is some crazy shit. I want to see what's going to go down. I want to see what Madonna, how is she going to paint the picture of herself to the world at large? I mean, what's really interesting is you've got to give it up for the Material Girl because, if you think about when she came on the scene and songs like Borderline and Lucky Star, and actually my favorite early Madonna song was Burning Up. I'm burning up because I'm on fire. I can't quench my desire. Don't you know that I'm burning up for your love? But
you call me the song and dance man. Come on.
I know. I'm telling you. But as she moved through her career, whether she was being outrageous, it's starting really with Like a Virgin. Then when she was going through what was it, Erotica, that she was doing that, Justify Your Love, which by the way is still a killer music video. And then the work she did revolutionizing the music video form. The whole album, like that Frozen is off of, is amazing. And like you said, she's probably one of the most important female artists of our time. Well, she was a force for youth in the 80s and 90s. Madonna's like 60.
62 years old.
She's 62. Okay, so she's 62. And I think what better way than to enter a new phase? I mean, she can't sit there and, name her albums after ecstasy anymore, like MDNA. You've got to reinvent yourself. And I think this is a way to reinvent herself in a really strange, kind of wonderful, exciting way. I mean, she knows enough to get a script. If she had said if they'd written and directed by Madonna, I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that. But the fact that I'm working with Diablo Cody, this is some smart stuff. And whether the movie turns out to be great or something like the Concorde Airport 79, which is not good for those of you who are trying to get what I'm trying to say. It's not good. Either way, what we're going to get is something that's going to be interesting, worth following, and certainly a curiosity. And what if it turns out to be really good? Madonna's done it again. Reinvented herself for the 2020s, deep into the new century, and it keeps her relevant. I mean, my God, from the 80s to the 2020s and beyond, that's pretty cool. So I'm rooting for the girl. I want to burn up with love for this movie, John.
I want to burn up with love for this movie. You had to work that in there.
I can't quench my desire.
Yeah, and listen, again, I think if there's going to be any... I honestly can't think of another musician or musical act that would more justify a biopic, even if it's an autobiopic, than Madonna does. I mean, very, very few names. The Beatles, perhaps, a band I don't even like, but they are like God status.
What?
I know somewhere Scott Mance is screaming at me, but they are God status. They are God status. Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones. Madonna's name is right there with that when you really understand the history of the industry. So it's going to be interesting. Question is, guys, what do you think about this? Maybe, despite her importance and all that kind of stuff, maybe that's not enough to outweigh the kind of question marks people are going to have about it with the fact that she's writing and directing and producing herself. I don't know. How do you feel overall about it? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With all of that down and out of the way, we're now going to move on and start taking your live questions. Once again, you can simply get a live question on the show right now, if it's within reason, by using the tip link at the top of the description of this video or enter it manually, streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. With that said, let's get into it and start taking your live questions, shall we? And we're going to start things off here with Anonymous, who writes, so this is an old topic, by the way. I found the Duel of the Fates script leaked online, and Esquire says it's real, and it looks like the one that Rob gave us a sneak peek at a few months ago. Have I fallen victim to fake internet leaks, or is this real? Well, I haven't seen the one you're talking about, and Rob, I don't know if you've taken a look at the one that they're saying Esquire is talking about. If you have, and you have seen the real one, is it real? Is it the legit one? Is it the same one that you saw?
Well, I haven't seen which script, but I would imagine it is, because there's really only one script that's floated around. It's all the same script. So I would imagine it is. I mean, I think so.
Right. And that it was actually 100% legit. Like, we won't talk about how but it was 100% legit.
No, I know it was 100% legit.
All right, so there you go, Anonymous. You did not fall victim to fake news on that. All right, next up, Kenny T writes, hearing suggestions that Pedro Pascal is having heated problems with execs about having scenes without the helmet. This apparently resulted in at least half of the season 2 being focused away from The Mandalorian. What does this mean for season 2 and beyond? Kenny, ignore that shit. Just ignore that. This is just from a logical point of view. This is some of the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard. All right. Number one, Pedro Pascal has almost nothing to do with The Mandalorian. Yeah, it's true. Pedro Pascal has almost nothing to do with The Mandalorian. He goes into a sound booth probably 3 or 4 days.
Right.
Goes into a recording booth and records the dialogue. And then he was actually on set for like 25% of season 1. We had Howard come out and point out that the episode she directed, she never even met Pedro Pascal. He was never even on set. We've heard that Pedro Pascal was never even set foot on set for several episodes of the show. They had 2 other guys in the Mandalorian outfit. One was a martial artist. One was a trained cinematic gunslinger, like Western gunslinger. And they would kind of rotate between using those people in and out. They didn't need Pedro Pascal around. Now, I love Pedro. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trashing on Pedro Pascal. I freaking love Pedro Pascal. Are you kidding me? He's awesome. But the reality is, out of the least important people actually involved in the movie, Pedro Pascal is one of the least important. He probably spent a good 12 days total working on that show. Probably 12 days total. And listen, Pedro Pascal also knew what they were going to be doing with the movie. He read season 2 script. It's not like, oh, we got halfway through season 2. There's this story going around that wants you to believe that halfway through season 2, Pedro Pascal just realized, wait a minute, I don't have scenes with my helmet off. That's not how this works. He knew what direction the show was going before they shot day 1. He had already shot all the audio scenes with it, and they've got body doubles in the suit with them. This story is so ludicrous to me. Now, that's not to say, Rob, that's not to say that there may not be some creative differences going on about what might happen in season 3, or there may not be some creative differences going on about moving forward. But this notion that somehow halfway through shooting season 2, this is how utterly ridiculous this is, that suddenly, magically, halfway through season 2, Pedro Pascal woke up and thought, oh, I know I read the script, but I just didn't know that was real. I'm not going to do the rest of the season. That's not how contracts work. You don't get to do that. Pedro Pascal wouldn't have legally been allowed to just go, I'm just not doing the rest of the season. They just would have sued him out of existence and he never would have worked in Hollywood again. Not to mention he had already recorded all of his stuff and they don't need him on set anyway. Jon Favreau already pointed out that this season was going to be different from the previous season and that it was going to follow different storylines, much like Game of Thrones did. But this notion, that anybody would buy into this completely unrealistic fairy tale that, oh, they actually shot half the movie and then Pedro got mad and he walked off the show. And so Jon Favreau had to suddenly rewrite the last half of the thing altogether and they had to change directions. Yeah, the amount of naivety, the sheer degree of naiveness you would have to believe that fiction. Again, that's not to say there weren't problems. That's not to say there weren't problems. But you have to have your head so far in the sand to believe this fiction, like the way it's being presented. Again, I'm not saying there were no problems. I'm not saying there may not be drama that they have to deal with season 3. I'm not saying there is. I'm not saying there isn't. But this construct that halfway through shooting, Pedro Pascal got mad that he didn't get to show his face because he didn't realize he wasn't get to show his face, and he stormed off the set, and Jon Favreau just rewrote the rest of the second half of the show to be without him when they never needed him in the first place because they just have body doubles in the Mando suit anyway. Anyway, I don't know. Rob, what do you think about this whole these whispers going around about that?
Dude, I am right there with you. And as you pointed out, the reality of how movies and TV are made is not rocket science. It's been relatively the same for 100 years. Technology has changed, camera equipment's changed, but contracts haven't. And what people sign on for. I mean, being in The Mandalorian for an actor, especially like Pedro Pascal, that people like, has got to be one of the cushiest jobs in the world. He gets to be the title character, and then he only has to play the title character in like 1.5 episodes per season. I mean, what a job. What a great job. And then they trot him out when they want people to see him, when they promote the show. I mean, it's the greatest. He knows. He goes into a booth. He voices his. You think he doesn't like that? Of course he's like, his character is one of the most talked about characters in entertainment on the planet right now. He doesn't care when he gets paid. You know, he's not going to get mad. Oh, you're not showing my face. No, his face is going to be in Wonder Woman 84. He's fine.
Yeah, it's and by by the way too, the behind the scenes documentary series they did on Mandalorian, they shot those round tables while they were shooting season 2. Yeah, just so everybody knows. And who's in those round tables? Pedro Pascal. So I mean, just another thing to keep. Again, not saying that there isn't any drama. Not saying that, but that particular specific construct that some people are trying to pitch to you. Don't buy that. All right, next up. Sam writes, hey, John, what Ann think of the Mando trailer? She loved it. She loved it. I got to watch. I saw it before she did, but then I sat down and watched her with. And of course, very predictably, her favorite part was the whole singing birds, yoink, hit the button, whoosh, close the dome. I mean, that has to be most of people's favorite scene, but she absolutely loved that. Thanks for asking, Sam. Cinema Reviews writes, did you see that Jason Momoa posted about supporting Ray Fisher? This came up yesterday. Supporting Ray Fisher and saying that Frosty the Snowman movie was fake. No, he didn't say that. He did not say that. He said something very specific, but he did not say the Frosty movie was fake. I thought something was off about that news. Why would Jeff Johns be involved with that? Or is there a Frosty comic he wrote I'm not aware of? No, here's the bottom line. Rob, you weren't here yesterday when I gave this totally out there tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theory. But I believe it. Listen, let me repeat something I said yesterday. First of all, there is a difference, Rob, you and I know this, between what you believe and what you know to be true. Those are two different things. Like, I know Anne's birthday. I know that to be true. That's April 2nd is Anne's birthday. I know that to be true. I try a new kind of ice cream, and I think Anne's really going to love this. I believe Anne's going to like this, but she might not. So there is often a difference between what you believe and what you know to be true. What I'm about to say is something that I believe, not that I know to be true. Let's be very clear about that. What we know to be true, or what we believe, will often evolve and change as new information and data and facts get presented to us. Then we change what we believe. But so here's where I am on this, Rob. So we saw Jason Momoa, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this because you and I haven't talked about this. Jason Momoa comes out the other day, and he gets on Twitter, and he says, hey, they released that fake news about me and Frosty that I didn't give anybody permission to release yet. I'm like, well, time out a second. Either it's fake news or they needed your permission. If you're saying you're mad that they didn't get your permission to release that news, then how can you pretend like it's fake? Deadline put out that report, and nobody has ever questioned the validity of the report. And here's the other thing, Rob. That report, that story that Deadline wrote, that you have Jeff Johns, or was it Berg? Anyway, one of the two is involved in this Frosty movie with Jason Momoa. If Jason Momoa saw a story in Deadline saying that he was voicing this blah, 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 he would have got on Twitter that day to say that's not true. Or maybe a few days later. That story came out nearly 11 weeks ago. 11 weeks ago. And you're just saying something about it now. By the way, no other Deadline has not retracted it. Nobody's saying that story wasn't real. So I found that to be very odd. Also, Ray Fisher just came out and is claiming that Warner Brothers purposefully leaked the Ben Affleck as Batman news, purposefully to take attention away from Ray Fisher's story, which, once again, that was 4 weeks ago. Why are you only mentioning that now 4 weeks later? And I'm sorry, but outside of hardcore people who follow DC, nobody knows who Ray Fisher is. Nobody knew who he was when he got cast to play thing. I think he's a very, very talented dude, but whatever. Rob, let me tell you what I have come to believe about this situation.
All right.
Not what I know to be true. Could be very, very wrong. Rob, the WWE was at its most powerful, and the reason Stone Cold Steve Austin became the most popular wrestler of all time was Vince McMahon, the owner of WWE, the boss, wrote himself as the villain and got everybody on board with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah, Stone Cold, stick it to the man. Yeah. Guess who was behind all of that? It was Vincent K. McMahon. He was the one who was doing it because it was great for business. Make it the world against the man, even though he was the man. Make it the world against the man. Get everybody on with Stone Cold and blah, 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 blah. Rob, when you look at that, and then you look at what happened with the release, the Snyder Cut thing, because remember a number of months ago, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, they all started tweeting out, release the Snyder Cut, and it got everybody excited. Yeah, Warner Brothers. Come on, Warner Brothers. It's all of us against you, Warner Brothers. Well, guess what we found out later? When they announced that the Snyder Cut was going to HBO Max, Zack Snyder revealed that the deal was made months before Jason Momoa and Ben Affleck. It was all coordinated by Warner Brothers. This whole, come on, Warner Brothers, listen to all of us. Warner Brothers orchestrated all of it. They played us. They totally played us. And just go back to the Ben Affleck situation. Ben Affleck on stage at Comic-Con, I'm still Batman, when the reality was he wasn't, but Warner Brothers played us all again. Rob, here's what I believe. Jason Momoa is an intelligent man. Ray Fisher, I don't know him personally, but he was a Broadway star. This dude is an intelligent man. I am telling you right now what I believe, not know to be true. This is all Warner Brothers. This is Warner Brothers playing all of us again, like they played us with the release the Snyder Cut stuff, like they played us with the Ben Affleck stuff. This is all of it. Why would Jason Momoa wait 11 weeks to say, oh, there's something fishy about that Frosty announcement? The announcement that came out 11 weeks ago? Why would Ray Fisher go, hey, everybody, Big Mean Warner Brothers, they just put out that Ben Affleck as Batman is back to distract. That was 4 weeks ago. Why are you only bringing it up now? I'll tell you why. Because it's it is Warner Brothers being Vincent McMahon. It is Warner Brothers doing a WWE. Hey everybody, let's get everybody excited. Let's make it everybody against us, and we'll get everybody excited about it. And they'll buy our HBO Max thing, and they'll get all excited. Again, I don't know this to be true. There's a million different ways, Rob, that this could be 5,000 degrees of wrong. But this whole thing looks so, no pun intended for Aquaman, but looks so fishy. This whole thing looks so, Rob, we just saw Jason Momoa doing this big Warner Brothers panel the other day with Dune. Woohoo, I'm in a Warner Brothers movie, woohoo! And then just a few days later, damn that Warner Brothers and them not doing this. Really? It looks so fishy to me. I think Warner Brothers, look, I like Warner Brothers a lot, but Warner Brothers has been so duplicitous and underhanded in their PR stuff in the past. I don't put this by them at all. I think Jason Momoa is in on it. I think Ray Fisher's in on it. I think they're all doing it. I think the reason we haven't seen Ben Affleck come in is because Ben Affleck is probably like behind the scenes. Listen, I played this game with you guys when we kept it secret that I was out as Batman, that I was done as Batman. Right. I don't think Gal Gadot wants to get into that game at all. So they're not doing it. But Jason Momoa's game. Jason Momoa, he's a team player. Yeah, man, I'll get involved in this. I'll be the new Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't know. What do you think, Rob?
What do you think their end game is, though?
I think their end game.
Stir the pot. Like, what are they trying to accomplish here, John?
Here's what I think they're trying to accomplish, and they're already accomplishing it. I think they're trying to do ultimately exactly what Vince McMahon was trying to do with Steve Austin. It got everybody on Steve Austin's train. I think what they are ultimately trying to do, because this is PR, I think ultimately what they're trying to do is keep everybody talking about this DC world. They want everybody to jump on the Ray Fisher bandwagon. They want everybody to jump on the Jason Momoa bandwagon. These guys are their people's heroes now. They're the people's heroes against the big corporate. We're the big bad guys, Warner Brothers, but it's them writing the script. I think their ultimate purpose, their end game, is exactly what we're seeing happening now. They're getting everybody on board. Everybody's talking about Snyder Cut. Everybody's talking about, will Ray Fisher appear in The Flash? I guarantee you he's going to be in Flash. I 100% guarantee you Ray Fisher is going to be in Flash, which just proves that this whole thing is Warner Brothers playing us. I believe it's going to prove. And you think Jason Momoa is not going to do Aquaman 2? You think if there was a real employee-employer relationship that Jason Momoa would be like, yeah, damn Warner Brothers, and that he would still be in Aquaman 2?
I'm not going to do it. $1 billion movie, I'm not going to be in another one.
I'm telling you, Ray Fisher's going to be in Flash. Jason Momoa is going to be in Aquaman 2. These guys are going to get pumped and promoted and move forward. Again, you don't have to tell me there's a million things that could be wrong with this theory of mine, because I know there are a million things that could be wrong with this theory of mine. And maybe I'm a little bit too much of a WWE kid from the 90s. Maybe that's true. You don't have to convince me. But I'm telling you, this is more and more every day. Every odd and weird thing I see tweeted, every odd and weird thing I see in Warner Brothers responses, it's just looking more and more to me like a job. It looks like we're getting played. But I don't know, a million different reasons why not. But we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. I think this is all being orchestrated. I think this whole thing, I think they're all in on it together, and I think it's all being orchestrated. Because I think Warner Brothers is devious that way. But that's just me. We'll see what happens. Okay, let's go on here. Shadow Jester writes, hey, John and Rob, hello. On Disney Plus right now, you can search TF and TWS. Guys, please don't write in acronyms. Please don't write in acronyms. For a 30-second teaser and quick synopsis, it says coming fall 2020. So clearly an updated timeline. What are the chances this happens and is around November 2020 or November 20th, 2020, November of 2020, 27th, keeping it still after BW? All right, BW, is that Black Widow? So maybe you're talking about, okay, so TF and you probably mean Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's not the Falcon. And it's just, okay, so guys, just please in the future, do not write in acronyms. I would appreciate that. Yeah, they're still very, Rob, right now, you and I both know they're still kind of being very nebulous about the release date. They're just, right now, they're just saying fall. We don't have a specified date. Normally, I would think that they have a date, they're just not letting us know. But right now, I kind of believe that they don't even know what date they're going to release it on. What do you think? I
agree with you entirely. Now they've got the Mandalorian, they don't have to worry. It's like, okay, we don't know when it's coming out. We got the Mando coming out. We got a great trailer. And now we got something to bring back the viewers if we've lost any. We'll get to the Marvel Cinematic Universe when we can, because it was all supposed to cross-promote itself. Black Widow comes out and creates the fervor. You follow up with Falcon and Winter Soldier. You hit them with Eternals. Then WandaVision. All of that, it's all part of the same continuum. And when you don't have the beginning of that continuum to thrust you into all this, you've got to push everything back. And now they don't know.
Yeah.
They just don't know.
I agree. All right, next up, Team Iron Man writes, hey, John and Rob, did you see recent Falcon and Winter Soldier set photos of, I did see this, of George St. Pierre. He plays Batroc the Leaper in Winter Soldier. I would love to see him get some revenge on Bucky/Team Cap in remembrance of Iron Man, #Orbit for Han. There you go, Orbit for Han. Yeah, I got really excited because my all-time, you guys know I'm a big MMA guy, and my all-time favorite martial artist is George St. Pierre. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. I love George St. Pierre. And I thought he was great. I'm not saying he's a great actor, but they minimized the number of lines he had to speak. His fight scene with Captain America at the beginning of Winter Soldier was fantastic. He went toe-to-toe with Cap in that, which was great. And yes, I was hoping he would appear, but I did see that he's back on set, so he's going to be in it. So I'm very excited about that. Rob, did you see these pics that people are talking about?
I did see the pics, and I'm in, bring it on. Hell yeah. I don't know wrestlers or MMA fighters like you do, but I find that I do appreciate the presence of people that really do look like they can kill somebody with their bare hands.
Yeah, and that's the thing with George St. Pierre. He really could kill you with his bare hands, so it's great to see.
I know.
I'm all for it, Team Iron Man. I'm all for it. Okay, Butt Dog writes, I do sympathize with those who were offended by Mel Gibson's famous rant, but after all these years, why are many still grudging? Many in Hollywood have been more quickly forgiven, and for much worse. My sincere apologies if anybody finds this insensitive. Well, yeah, listen, it's one of those situations where you all have to acknowledge you may feel one way, but you got to understand why other people may feel differently. Like, I had somebody that I worked with of Jewish descent, and I'm not talking about Rob. And, they were never really able to quite get over the Mel Gibson thing. And I respect that because, listen, I'm not of Jewish descent. I'm not going to tell somebody else who is of Jewish descent how they should or should not feel about a certain person who went on a rant rage and stuff like that about them. I'm not going to tell them how they should feel. I can't relate. I'm not that person. I don't have that history. For me, it's usually more about, I care more about people's actions. And let's just say that after hearing the people who do business with Mel Gibson, I was able to eventually move past. I thought he paid his penance publicly. I thought he was, it forever changed his career. He got publicly humiliated for it, and rightfully so. But I was able to move on. But just because I was able to move on from it doesn't mean I think everybody else should. And it's just one of those situations where different people are going to feel differently. Rob, I'd actually be really curious because, you come from your family background. You were raised Jewish. I'd be curious to know just your individual take on the whole Mel Gibson thing.
Well, I mean, one of the things, because I was adopted into a Jewish family, I don't, I guess, look traditionally Jewish. So I've heard a lot of people, I always say I'm a stealth Jew. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of anti-Semitic stuff in my presence. And look, I mean, when Mel Gibson went off on his rant, he's a beloved figure in Hollywood. People really liked Mel Gibson. He was great to work with. And I think, you know, when you're drunk and you get angry, I think there's a lot of things people say. There's a lot of bubbling anger. There's a lot of things people will never tell you that they're really thinking. But my whole feeling is this. I mean, I don't begrudge him for all you can do in life is you've got to forgive people. Because if you're going to harbor a grudge with people forever, what kind of life are you going to have for yourself? And, you know, if I was ever able to work with Mel Gibson, I mean, I've watched movies like Dragged Across Concrete that I thought he was very good in. And I only ever met Mel Gibson once when I was at Warner Brothers, and I didn't like meet him. I was just there when he was talking. He said hello to me. But everyone loved that guy. You know, if you worked on the Warner Brothers lot in the late 80s or early 90s and people talked about Mel Gibson, the guy was like one of the most beloved figures ever. And so, you know, he did some stupid stuff, but I believe in forgiveness. I believe, you know, fool me once though, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You do it again, then I'm like, all right, I write you off. But you've got to give people an opportunity you got to forgive people, because otherwise, why lead your life? Are you going to be consumed by everybody that does you wrong? I mean, there's so much hate in the world. Let's face it, John, we live on a planet where there's a lot of hatred. People hate everybody. Go anywhere, there's always groups of people that hate other groups of people. And I'm like, for no reason. You just got to forgive and move on. I still like Mel Gibson. I like Mel Gibson movies. All right. You know what? If he hates Jews, that's his prerogative. But if I ever met him, hopefully I could prove to him that, you know, you don't have to hate me. We can be friends.
All right, let's move on here. Tristan Larson writes, why does Gina Carano keep digging herself deeper and deeper into this crap storm on Twitter? Seems like she's making fun of marginalized community while everyone is just begging her to stop. Listen, I'm not going to get into, I mean, the Mel Gibson was borderline enough. I'm not going to get into TMZ bullshit of, did you see what this person's tweeting and whatever? And I appreciate you sending the question and asking, but that's not what I'm here to. I didn't wake up this morning thinking, let's talk about what Gina Carano is saying on Twitter. That's not what I want to be here and do. So I hope you understand. Yeah. Thank you for asking, but I hope you understand why I don't feel like I want to use my time to discuss it. I Butt Dialed Batman writes, Fan since AMC, thank you so much for that. I've seen Tenet 4 times in theaters now. The 2 times I saw it in Dolby, it was loud and I couldn't hear the dialogue. But the 2 times I saw it in a smaller theater chain, the sound was lower and I could hear absolutely everything. Why do you suppose that is? I mean, it could be very much a part of the fact that the IMAX and Prime Dolby experiences are very much designed. Their audio is very, very much designed, whereas maybe a lot of regular theaters just get a basic mixed down track or whatever, and it's not that big of a deal. I've heard from some people as well that said it was just as bad in a regular theater. I've heard from other people say they saw it in a regular theater and it actually wasn't as bad. So that's a good thing to know. The first time I saw it in a Dolby Prime. So the next time I see it with Ann, I'm going to purposely make sure I watch it more in a regular theater to see if there's any difference. So thanks for sharing your experience on that, Butt Dialed. But yeah, I think if there is a difference, it has to do with the sound systems, and the designs for the sound systems that are in those specific theaters are very, very specific. And maybe there could be a practical difference there. So we'll wait and see. All right, Augie Boreas writes, Hey, John, just responding to the viewer's question about the Baby Yoda hot toy. I pre-ordered mine back in February, was supposed to receive it by October, just got an email last week saying they will start shipping early November. I cannot wait. So, Rob, somebody wrote in a question yesterday about that Baby Yoda. They're expecting to get it soon. Did you end up ordering that 1-to-1 scale Baby Yoda? And if so, have you gotten any notifications about when it'll arrive?
Yes, I did. And yes, that is true. You know, all of Hot Toys, though, have been pushed back because of the pandemic. Because remember, they literally are on boats and they're being brought over. So the shipping and COVID and all that really pushed their schedule by months, which is good because otherwise I'd be broke. And I think that, November, we'll start seeing those things come in and ship. So I wouldn't worry about it. Hot toys are always, they're always delayed, but worth the wait.
All right, next up. Scott Brown writes, just felt like giving my top 5 TV dramas, and I can only rank what I've seen. Number 5, The Expanse. I love The Expanse. Number 4, Supernatural. I love Supernatural. Number 3, Justified. Number 2, ER. Overlooked class. A lot of the ER was a super popular classic for a long time. And number 1, a lot of people overlooked The X-Files. Rob, any one of these 5 really jump out to you that you're? I know you love The Expanse. You're one of the people who got me into The Expanse, but any of the other ones?
Yeah, I love The Expanse, and I love The X-Files. I just wish that the show didn't hold together throughout its run, but I do love The X-Files, and I really love The Expanse.
All right, next up, Angela Dashner, who tipped in $20. Thank you so much for supporting the channel on that level, Angela. Thanks, John. So, went to see Tenet in regular theater and still had sound mix problems. See, we just had somebody say they saw it in a regular one, no sound mix problem, but others are. Still had sound mix problems with the movie. Do you think that this is hurting box office? I don't think that Black Widow or Wonder Woman will have this issue, so would their box office suffer? I was talking about this the other day. Listen, the issues with Tenet aren't just pandemic issues. They're also issues of, there's a lot of people seeing the movie that are grumbling about it, whether it's not being able to hear dialogue, the various issues with sound mixing, some people finding the movie just far too confusing. So you're not getting that rave word of mouth that we traditionally get from a Christopher Nolan movie. So I think you're right, Angela. I think there's so many people talking about the audio issues that, yes, I don't think it's making a night and day difference, but is it making a difference? I believe so, yes, because I hear a lot of people talking about it. And if other people are hearing those people talk about it, it's going to affect their decision. Because a lot of people were probably on the fence already about whether or not they, in a pandemic, a lot of people are on the fence about whether or not they want to go to the theater or not. They start hearing, it's hard to understand, you can't hear anything. Well, that's going to push them off to one side of the fence then. So yes, I do believe that's having an impact. And hopefully that's not an element or a dimension that would come into play with either, say, a Wonder Woman or a Black Widow, if those movies do release on time as it is. Thanks a lot for writing that in, Angela, and thanks for sharing your experience. All right, Ben A. writes, hey, John, I've just been catching up with your shows this week. Thank you so much. Just thought I would let you know that Barbara Muschietti, I had a friend of mine call me and remind me about this. Just wanted to let you know that Barbara Muschietti is Andy's sister, not wife. Otherwise, that would be awkward. Other than that, just want to say thank you for the incredible show every day. I didn't know that. I said forgot. I didn't forget. I didn't know that. I have always assumed that Barbara Muschietti was Andy's wife. Because we see a lot of husband and wife teams. Zack Snyder and his Deborah Snyder. We see lots of that. We see lots of that. I've just always assumed. I had no idea it was sister, but I had somebody call me yesterday, a friend of ours call me yesterday to remind me, or not to remind me, but to let me know that. I'm like, really? I never knew. I never knew. I just made an assumption. You know what they say about assuming? Assuming makes an ass out of you and you. So anyway, yes. So let's move on here. But thanks for throwing that out there, Ben. All right. Timothy writes, 1 of 2. Hey, John, love the show. Thank you so much, Timothy. I was reading Mulan's wiki page and noticed that it says there is a sequel in development. Although it doesn't say where it was confirmed that this is true, I personally really enjoyed Mulan and wouldn't mind a sequel to it. But with all of the controversy that Mulan has garnered, with the CFO even confirming that the film has caused a lot of issues for them, do you think Disney is willing to make a sequel to Mulan? Seems like a big risk now. Well, the big thing here is that you found it on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a place where anybody can go and submit edits and things. Never take that as anything. Look, I think Mulan is like 90% of the movies made in Hollywood. I think it was planned as a standalone, and if it made $1.5 billion at the box office, they would damn well look at doing a sequel, just like Joker. Totally planned as being a standalone, that's it, one shot. I believe there's a very good chance we're going to get a Joker sequel because it got nominated for Best Picture, won Joaquin Phoenix an Academy Award, made over $1 billion at the box office. Yeah, so that's possible, but I don't think there was ever any real plans. I don't think there was ever any real plans for a Mulan sequel. And compounding all the mixed, lukewarm reviews or feedback we've been hearing from people, including from me, and I was really excited about the film. I still liked it in general, but it was a missed opportunity. All the issues it's had around the world. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing a sequel to Milan. I just don't think that we will be. Chris writes, hey, the name Paramount Plus has been around longer than Disney Plus. I did some design work for it back in 2016. In the EU, example Hungary, it's been P Plus for a few years, SVOD platform. I didn't know that. CBS now changing after the merger with Viacom. Bring on the filthy. And Rob, that was something we talked about yesterday about Paramount. They're rebranding CBS All Access into Paramount Plus.
Oh, yes.
Now, so what I had said on yesterday's show was this. I was turned off when Apple TV Plus called it Apple TV Plus. It's like, really? We just got Disney calling it Disney Plus. Now you're going to call it that. But since Apple did it, and now we got ESPN Plus and whatever, it's like, well, now from a branding point of view, I get it. Because now people expect that. Now people instantly know for branding purposes, you say so-and-so plus, you've just kind of, now people know exactly what it is your thing is. Oh, that is the premium streaming version of this. So I get it. And CBS All Access, that's not a name that's going to attract people. Paramount Plus may not be the sexiest thing in the world, but it's going to, I think, garner more attention and be looked at a little bit differently than CBS All Access. What do you think about that branding decision they made to change it to Paramount Plus?
Well, I talked a little bit about that yesterday, and I think it's a good one. I mean, I really do. And I love people being snarky, like people don't remember Paramount. I'm like, look, Paramount Plus is a lot sexier than CBS All Access. I mean, CBS All Access sounds like you're going to a sporting event and you get a backstage pass. Paramount Plus is like, I grew up loving the Paramount Mountain. I love Paramount movies, whether it's The Godfather or Chinatown, the Star Trek movies, Top Gun, Grease. I mean, you name it. And I think one of the things that's happening in our landscape is that, when you get a studio like this, you get their entire catalog of all the movies they've made and their storied history. And Paramount's goes back 100 years. So I think that's what you lead with. You lead with a studio. We've got HBO Max is Warner Brothers. The Peacock is Universal. Paramount Plus is now, Paramount. I think it's the way to go. I think you've got a whole history and a legacy that you roll into your branding, and I think it's fantastic. I can't wait.
Next up, we've got Butt Dog, who writes, I recently got to watch in person out of Cape Canaveral, Florida, the launch of the Mars Perseverance rover, and it was awesome. It aroused the part of my brain that loves sci-fi 100 times more than it's even been stimulated. Have you seen a space launch? I have never seen a space launch in person. I've watched a couple on TV. I've never watched a space launch in person. I do have to imagine it'd be pretty impressive to see and kind of certain. But I can't relate with that because I've never been there. Rob, I know being a big science and space guy as you, but to the best of my knowledge, you've never lived in Florida. Have you ever? I know if anybody's, I would know that would want to have been at a live space launch, it would be you. But have you ever had that opportunity?
I have never been to a live space launch as long as I've lived, and I've desperately wanted to go to one. But I'll tell you a quick story. I was in Montreal, in your home country, when the Curiosity lander landed on Mars, and it was back in 2012. And there's the way they did it was cockamamie, the engineering feat of getting that thing on the Martian surface. And they have this thing called the 7 minutes of terror, like it was going to crash. I was sitting in a bar, man, and this was at night. And I was sitting there waiting for that 7 minutes where the signal was lost. If they could if they get the signal back, they knew it worked. And when it came back, involuntary tears. I was just crying because of the feat of it, and tears are streaming down my face. I'm staring at the screen like this, and the bartender comes over to me. He's like, "Man, are you okay? Like, are you all right?" And I was just like, I'm like, can you believe what they just did? And the bartender's like, "What happened, man?" And like all these people around me are like, "Are you okay?" And then finally I explained, and people are like, "Oh, that's all." Like, this is the greatest engineering feat in all of human history, and you're saying that's all?
Some people just don't appreciate it like others do. All right, let's move on. Screamatron writes, "Hey John, I'm finally the ruler of the Decepticons with the help of my most loyal soldiers, the Combaticons. Surely I'll rule for millennia or an episode. I finished Doom Patrol. Flex Mentalo was great. I think I flexed the wrong muscle. Now on to Kim's Convenience. Listen, I gotta tell you, I've talked a lot about Doom Patrol on this show, which, by the way, I was just telling you this, Rob, before we started the show. I'm watching Lovecraft Country right now. The latest episode of Lovecraft Country, Rob, is the most bonkers episode of television I have ever seen. And that's, or at least tied with the I flexed the wrong muscle episode of Doom Patrol. I think it's a tie now that the most recent episode of Lovecraft and that episode of Doom Patrol of I Flexed the Wrong Muscle. If you've seen Doom Patrol, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, you have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'm not even going to try to explain it to you. But amongst the crazy stuff. By the way, did you ever get around to seeing that thing on Doom Patrol? Did you ever get to see like the I Flexed the Wrong Muscle episode? I can't remember.
Yes, I did.
Is that not one of the craziest things ever in television history?
Yes. It was fantastic.
So, hey, I'm glad you enjoyed that, Starscream, and yes, do get on to Kim's Convenience. It's brilliant. All right, B. Wayne, New York writes, "Hey, John, per your suggestion, my girlfriend and I watched Kim's Convenience. We loved it. We binged all 4 seasons last weekend. My landlords are an older, funny Asian couple, just like Appa and Uma. They always come to me for help with their English. Looking forward to seasons 5 and 6. Listen, I'm telling you, I am ashamed as a Canadian that I went so long without knowing about this show. And I finally got turned on to it and started watching it. Dennis Zen had talked about it for a while. I keep hearing him talk about, like, every once in a while he would comment on stuff for me on social media, sneak attack. I'm like, what does that mean? Now I know what it means. Kim's Convenience is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time now. I'm not saying it's the same level as The Office or Parks and Rec, but I'm telling you, it's close. It's absolutely brilliant, and I'm glad you guys got turned on to that, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. I love this show, and I cannot wait for the next season whenever it's coming. And by the way, of course, the big brother in the show, one of the leads of the show, he's your new Shang-Chi for the MCU. So if you want to get an early glimpse at him, go on to Netflix and watch Kim's Convenience. Starscream writes again, "Hello, John. The Combaticons weren't that dependable after all, but I'm sure my next plan will succeed. I watched a couple of episodes of Kim's Convenience." Right back to Kim's Convenience. And it's hilarious. First episode had me hooked. Thanks for all the suggestions of great entertainment. And again, yeah, right from the cold open scene of episode 1, I was hooked. Most sitcoms have a cold open scene before they run the opening credits. The cold open scene of Kim's Convenience, season 1, episode 1, absolutely had me hooked. 15% discount only for the gay. You may have no idea what that means. Watch the show and you'll be hooked right away too. All right, next up, MD writes, Devil All the Time, that's the new Tom Holland film that's on, I believe it's on Netflix, is getting mixed but leaning positive reviews, 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, with most highlighting Tom Holland and expressing that this will be a career defining for him. Makes me want to watch, but I hear it's very gory/violent, which makes me nauseous. I haven't heard anything about it yet myself, Rob. I know you and I have talked about Devil All the Time. I was not impressed by the trailer, so I haven't really been excited to watch it. I don't know, though. Again, I haven't watched it yet. I don't know how any movie can be a career-defining performance for an actor if the movie isn't all that well liked. I think it needs a mixture. You have to be incredible in it, and the movie has to be well received, but whatever. Have you had a chance to watch it yet? Have you had a chance to see this thing yet?
I have not. I have barely been out of here working, but it's definitely something. This weekend, I'm going to catch up with it because I'm caught up with my work.
Right. All right. I think I will try to watch it myself as well. All right. Luke1234 writes, tech question, sort of. When you make large, expensive purchases like TVs, cell phones, or even your Rodecaster Pro, how long do you keep the box for? I ask because I have every phone I've owned still in their original box since 2004, Nokia brick phone. Good on you. I actually, you can't see it right now. If I go to my wide shot here, so you see my Canadian flag. My Canadian flag, that is this big piece. It's made out of reclaimed barn wood. So a barn was torn down. They took the wood from the barn, the slats from the barn. It's gorgeous. I love this Canadian flag. But if it weren't for the fact that it was sitting on my Rodecaster Pro box, you probably wouldn't see it in picture right now. So yes, I actually, for my bigger stuff, I don't know why, my bigger stuff, like when I say big, I mean physically the size of it, my Rodecaster Pro, my 32-inch monitor, my like certain things like that, for some reason I hold on to those boxes, and I don't know why. Smaller stuff, like I just bought the, I have it here right now, I just bought the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. I throw the boxes for these out right away. And this thing was more expensive than my Rodecaster Pro, but I throw the boxes for my cell phones out immediately. But yeah, I don't know why I have that habit. Rob, I mean, not counting Hot Toys, which is a different thing. The boxes themselves are practically collectors things. But
oh, yeah.
with all the technology, what do you hold on to the boxes or do you get rid of them right away? How do you deal with that?
I toss that stuff. I really do, because like, look, you buy a TV, what are you going to do with that box? Yeah, how many times are you going to move? You know, if you move, you put towels around it or bubble wrap around it, and you take it where you got to go. I've really started to get to the point where I used to be a box hoarder, and now I'm like, I'm even at the point where when I first bought Hot Toys, when I first started, I didn't keep the box for any of my toys. Then I started keeping the boxes, but now I'm leaning like, why do I have all these? I mean, the boxes are cool, but they're starting to take up more space than the figures themselves. And I'm like, I'm like, at the end of the day, you know, you have toys, you throw them away. They're not exactly, I do not buy Hot Toys for investment purposes.
You get them to enjoy them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. All right, Aaron.
I have to say, John, I was just going to say, having all your phones and the boxes they came in, that would kind of be cool, because
that's really cool.
Yeah, and then you've got the evolution of that. I think that's kind of neat. You could have that. I would love to have that on a shelf somewhere.
I agree. I think that's a great thing to do. All right, last question. We have time with Rob here with us here, because he's got stuff he's got to go work on. Aaron Nonica writes, "Hi, John. Hope all is well. FYI, the Trial of the Chicago 7 was originally going to get the theatrical release through Paramount, but made a deal with Netflix, for $56 million due to the pandemic. Love the show. Keep up the outstanding work and bring on the filthy." So, Rob, I don't think you and I had a chance to talk about the Trial of the Chicago 7, the new Aaron Sorkin movie that he's directing. The first movie, he's only his second feature film that he's directing. The first one he did was Molly's Game, which I think you and I both absolutely loved. I loved Molly's Game.
I watched it last night. I love it.
Oh, it's so good. I love that movie. Really excited about it. But I said that my enthusiasm is on, and look, you got Sacha Baron Cohen looks great in it. You got Joseph Gordon-Levitt who looks great in it. It's a good trailer, man. It's a really good trailer. But I said my enthusiasm is tempered a little bit because it's a Netflix film. And the reality is, while there have been some exceptions, Old Guard, The Irishman, like 8 out of 10, literally, I'm without hyperbole, I find 8 out of 10 Netflix original movies I end up not liking or being disappointed by. Now, you mention that, like other Netflix films, some other Netflix films, this one is originally going to be a Paramount film that was going to go theatrical, got sold off. That only makes it worse, because both times, I believe this has happened twice with Paramount, both times has not worked out well. The first time that Paramount kind of at the last minute ditched off one of their theatrical movies, Rob, to Netflix, was that Cloverfield movie. Remember that?
Yeah, man. I wanted to love that too.
That movie was all sorts of ass. I hated that movie. It was terrible. And it's like, oh, I guess why they did it.
Too.
Then the last, I believe it was Paramount. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat, but Kumail Nanjiani, who I love very much, they had that romantic comedy that he just did, and then suddenly it got pushed off and then I watched it and I'm like, oh, it actually wasn't all that good. It wasn't terrible, not like the Cloverfield movie, but it wasn't actually all that good. So to be honest with you, finding out this is another film in the line of Paramount ditching off their movies to Netflix, not a good track record with that. But anyway, Rob, you saw the trailer for the Trial of the Chicago 7. What did you think of the trailer, and where's your hope level right now for the movie?
Well, I'm a huge Aaron Sorkin fan, And, like you said, we're on our show that we do when Elizabeth and I review movies, we're doing Molly's Game tonight. And watching that movie back, his dialogue, even the editorial in that film, the editing is impeccable. And it's just the pitter patter, the characterization. Idris Elba knocks it out of the park in Molly's Game.
Yeah.
And so the combination of characters and performances, I'll watch anything that Sorkin's involved with only because he classes up the joint. He wrote The American President. I love The American President. Of course, I love West Wing. And Sorkin's script, The Social Network, man. I'll watch anything he's done. This is a passion project for his. I think it's going to be worth watching. Very excited.
All right. And Rob, I know you got stuff you got to do. Thanks for hanging out with us here today. We'll talk to you again soon. But in the meantime, my friend, where can people follow you and your great adventures online? And are you ready to tell people about that little project of yours? Or do you want us to hold off on that for now?
No, I'll tell you about that. First of all, over on my YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, where you can always find me on my show, Robservations, we are running the first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Our final deadline is December 1st. And John Campea is officially one of our celebrity judges, many more of which will be announced today on the show. And anything you want to make, it's got to be narrative. It's got to be completely original. So you can't use a Beatles song in it. And it has to be a universal premiere, because this film festival is the first film festival that we are inviting any extraterrestrials, any non-Earth dwelling beings to submit films to. I don't know if we're going to get any, but we are the first film festival to ever do this. So join us there. Also, you can find me on Instagram, or you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. So join our festival, and you'll be able to start seeing films when they come in. And John's going to be a judge for us.
I shall adjudicate. All right, Rob, thanks a lot for being here, man. We'll talk to you again soon, my friend.
All right, man. I'll see you later.
Take care. All right, guys, we still got some time here left to get through some more of your questions, so let's keep right on rolling here. Next up, we've got not Kevin Feige. I like that name. Not Kevin, or is that the next one, or did I skip one here? Nope, we're at it. Not Kevin Feige writes, "Hey, John, you say Kevin Feige won't alter his plans by adding Fantastic Four and X-Men characters right away. But what about Kang? James Gunn confirmed on Twitter that Fox owned Kang prior to the merger. That was debunked, though. Don't forget, that was debunked. Prior to the merger. You think there were different plans for Ant-Man 3. So let's be clear about this. I'm not saying, and I haven't said, that Kevin Feige will not alter his plans. I've simply said that Kevin Feige said that he's not changing his plans, right? I'm just telling you that Kevin Feige said that. And so far, he's held to that. Doesn't mean he always will. He could change course. He could change mind. But when Fox got taken over by Disney, and everybody was asking, and everybody was claiming that the X-Men were going to get thrown in right away, there were even, remember this, guys? There were even a bunch of people, when the pictures of Thanos came out, and Thanos had those 3 scars, there were literally, it was a big, people took it seriously. That was proof Wolverine is going to be in Infinity War or Endgame, or one of the two. Because look at the 3 scars. That clearly came from Wolverine's claws. Anyway, Kevin Feige came out around that time and said, look, we have a lot of properties on our desk. I've got the next 5 years planned out. We will look at incorporating all these new characters later. But we've got the next 5 years planned out. So Kevin Feige said, I guess I can take my headphones off now. Kevin Feige said that he would not be changing his plans. And I've just reminded people he said that. The Kang thing, I believe, once James Gunn said that, I believe other officials came out and either debunked it or qualified that by saying actually Marvel could have used him, but whatever, at any rate. But listen, just because Kevin Feige said that doesn't mean that he can't change directions. He is Kevin Feige. It's his decision. So he could. But so far, he has pretty much stuck to that. You know, a lot of people predicted we were going to have X-Men characters in the MCU already by now. And obviously we haven't. So he's kept true to that. So maybe he sticks to that. Maybe he doesn't. We'll have to wait and see as things transpire. But that's the thing about Hollywood, man. People's minds change. You can decide one thing one day, change your mind the next. So let's see what happens. All right. Butt Dog Bob's Gas Fart writes, personally, I don't think of the comic genre as really being a genre. There's just such a vast difference tonally between the films. Ant-Man is about as different from Doctor Strange as Who Framed Roger Rabbit is from Total Recall. I don't think I agree with that. Your thoughts? Well, listen, no, we've had the debate 1,000 times, like over the years, going all the way back to going all the way back to the movie blog. I remember having to write articles about, is the comic book genre a genre? Then having debates on For Your Consideration, then having debates on AMC Movie Talk, then having debates on Collider Movie Talk, and then having the discussion even more on the John Campea Show. We've discussed this an awful lot. Is the comic book movie a genre? It really all depends on the semantics of it and how you're defining genre. Generally speaking, when people think of genre, they think of getting groups of films into certain types, so that when you mention the genre, it automatically creates an association with the person listening. On that level, you can't argue that comic books aren't a genre, because you mention comic book movie, instantly people associate a certain group of movies right away. Just like if you say romantic comedy, period piece, drama, political thriller, documentary, whatever, if people can instantly associate and identify movies just by the mentioning of the subgroup, then it kind of is a genre. However, you raise a good point that we've raised here on the show before too. Right? You've got comic book movies. Some are comedies. Some are dramas. Some are political thrillers. Some are time travel romps. Some are whatever, right? So they can be very different, yet the same. But then somebody else brings up the point. Dramas can be very different from each other too, but that doesn't mean that drama isn't a genre. So it's all depends on the semantics of it and how you kind of choose to define it. I personally take the position that yes, comic book movies is a genre. When you mention it as a genre, people instantly identify that group of films. So to me it is, but you can make an argument that it isn't. And that argument is going to happen again. It's going to happen again, Butt Dog. All right. Chago Minion writes, saludos, John and Rob, from the lovely island of Puerto Rico. I hear Puerto Rico is surrounded by water, big water. Anyway, I just wanted to know, seen the recent Ryan Reynolds commercials? Oh yeah, we've talked about them. One is Bring Back Rick Moranis Out of Retirement and Hugh Jack Coffee commercial. Both funny as hell. Your thoughts? Yes. We've talked about the Rick Moranis thing. We've talked about the Rick Moranis thing on here. And the Rick Moranis thing was absolutely brilliant. Getting Rick Moranis to come out of retirement. Hey, I mean, he's Rick Moranis. He's a god. That was great. I have said this before. I will say it again. The fake Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman feud, which you would have thought would be boring and played out by now, and it's not. I have said before, and I will say again, the Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman online feud is the greatest thing on the internet today for the last couple of years. It is the single greatest thing on the internet. No matter what, the little jabs they take at each other, or there was one Hugh Jackman just did. Oh my God, let me see if I can find it. Give me a second. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it here. Oh my God, there it is. So there's this picture. Let me bring it up. Let me bring it up here. All right. So Hugh Jackman laying down in bed, right? And it just said, the title of it is An Honest Glimpse into a Day in My Life. And him laying down in bed, right? And Ryan Reynolds, let me see if I can blow this up at all. Ryan Reynolds wrote a response to it that said, "You sleep wearing a wig?" I don't care. That's one of the funniest things in the world to me. To me, that is absolutely one. The Hugh Jackman, the world needs Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Somehow, some way, these guys have to do a movie together. I have made an argument before that they could do a Face-Off reboot Face-Off, but instead of Nick Cage and John Travolta, have it Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Go. You're welcome. I just made your studio $1 billion. Their feud is the greatest thing on the internet. It absolutely is. All right. Next thing up, Nick White writes, hey, John, big fan since AMC Movie Talk. Thank you so much, Nick. If you haven't checked out The Last Black Man in San Francisco on Prime Video, it's a movie based around the themes of gentrification and Jonathan Majors. I totally forgot. And actually, The Last Black Man in San Francisco was a movie I was really late to the party on. I mean, I saw it like months and months and months after everybody else did. I was really late to that, but I totally forgot it's in there. And of course, if you're Jonathan Majors, why is that name familiar? Jonathan Majors, the reason that's coming up right now is because, and the reason Nick brings it up, is because Jonathan Majors is currently the star of Lovecraft Country. He's the main guy in it. And of course, we just talked about him the other day. I believe it was Deadline revealed that he is going to be the major villain of Ant-Man 3. And they speculate, it's not fact, but they're saying that they have people telling them that he's going to play Kang the Conqueror. So that's why that's big up on there now. Excellent recommendation, Nick. All right. K Major writes, my take on the epic trailer voiceover, particularly the In a World, where Cat wears suits. I'm not familiar with that one. It lets me know that, hey, wow, there's a world that cats wear suits and not mine. Good to know. So somebody brought up the other day, I don't know if this is what K Major is referring to, but somebody I think it might have been Willow brought it up the other day, about what happened to the big voiceover person? What happened to the In a World things in trailers, right? Now, I don't want to go into it too much because I actually touch on that in my new documentary that I'm now done. I got a few little technical things to work on, a few little audio issues here and there, but basically my documentary, Movie Trailers, A Love Story. That's the name of my documentary, Movie Trailers, A Love Story. It is now done, and I'm stoked about it. I just actually submitted it to some film festivals. Now, here's the problem. Little inside baseball. The problem is I submitted them to significant film festivals, which means the likelihood of my movie getting accepted, like I submitted to the Maui Film Festival, the Santa Monica International Film Festival, the Studio City International Film Festival, the Portland International. Like I submitted my movie to all festivals that are in the gold top 50 film festivals in the world, which means the likelihood of my documentary getting accepted into any of them are probably very small. But still, I'm excited that I was able to submit to these festivals. Yes, I even submitted it to Sundance. My chances of getting into Sundance, somewhere around here. But I'll just be thrilled if I can get into any festival, to be honest with you. But in that documentary, which I just shamelessly plugged for the last 90 seconds, there is a part in the documentary where we do specifically talk about the inner world, particularly the great Don LaFontaine, and what happened to it. Where did it go? Why did it go? Stuff like that. So we touch on that in the documentary, so I don't want to spoil anything. Anyway, thanks for giving me the opportunity to shamelessly plug my documentary, K Major. I appreciate that. All right, K Major also writes, finally saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Holy crap, the last 10 minutes of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood were like 10 of my favorite minutes in any movie that year. The ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is bonkers amazing. Just absolutely bonkers amazing. Anyway, holy crap, the last 10 minutes. But for me, the best thing about the movie was the friendship between Leo and Brad. That was terrific. Their chemistry on screen together was fantastic. I bought it, especially at the end when he's telling, he's a good friend, warmed my heart. Everyone needs a Brandy. She was my third favorite character in that movie. One thing confused me. What was the point of Margot Robbie's character? I always glad to see her, if you know what I mean, though. Listen, that was my big thing at the end of the day, and I went to go see, I think, like 3 times. I think I went to go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 3 times. It is not my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. Actually, I put it in the bottom half of Quentin Tarantino movies. Still, most of the films in the bottom half of Quentin Tarantino movies are still really good. I would put Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the bottom half of Quentin Tarantino's films. But one of my biggest problems was, ultimately, Margot Robbie's character was a total waste of time. I get it. Oh, I get it. Some people, Judd, you just don't get it. No, I get it. I get they were setting us up for what happens at the end. But 2 minutes would have sufficed to set everybody up for what comes at the end. not the 20 minutes or however much screen time Margot Robbie's character had. It was totally wasted. Like, there's this entire sequence in the movie where she's walking around town. She goes into a movie theater to watch one of her movies. It keeps coming back to her watching and laughing at her own film with her feet up and blah, blah. Ultimately, that whole stuff served no purpose to the movie. No, John, you just don't get it. They were, no. I get what it was they were trying to do, but it didn't work. And it was a waste of screen time. And it was frustrating. But whatever. But yeah, the Leo and Brad stuff, and I agree, Margot Robbie is a national treasure. She is stupid talented. Like, she's been nominated for Oscars before her career's done. She's going to have gold statues on her mantle. She's that good. But I thought that was a waste. Anyway, that's just me. But yeah, the Leo Brad stuff was incredible. And the last 10 minutes, are you effing kidding me? The last 10 minutes were gold. All right, next up, Chris Cortezi writes, do you think that Christopher Nolan messing with the audio and making it so you can't hear what they're saying is doing this on purpose so people have to go and see it again and paying again to make more money at the box office? All right, well, the first thing that I should mention is this. What is very clear about Tenet when you watch it is that there are a couple of scenes where you can tell Christopher Nolan purposefully doesn't want the audience to understand what's being said. I'm not going to give anything away, but there are a couple of scenes where it's obvious that Christopher Nolan, that we as the audience are not meant to be able to understand what the other guy is saying, because we find out a little bit later and it has a narrative and dramatic impact. But there are also many scenes in the movie where we are supposed to be able to understand what's being said. Does Christopher Nolan do that on purpose to get people to go back to the theater? No, I don't think Christopher Nolan does it on purpose. At least not for that purpose. No, I don't believe that at all. All right, next up. Toba70 writes, hey, John, I saw Devil All the Time today. Somebody else was mentioning that. I like it a lot, especially Tom Holland's performance. So different from his other movies. The movie was shot in 35 millimeter, is really visually beautiful. Have you seen it in your thoughts? I have not watched it yet. The trailer didn't work for me. I'll be honest with you. The trailer did not excite me. I thought the trailer was rather bland and cookie cutter, and I've seen every element in that trailer I've seen in other trailers. And that's fine. There are other trailers that I've seen that are completely not original at all, and yet I love them. So I don't know. I can't quantify why I didn't really like the trailer that much, but I love everybody. Robert Pattinson, Tom Holland. I mean, so yeah, the trailer didn't really do much for me. I will watch it. Because it is Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson. I am excited for it. I will check it out at some point, but no, I have unfortunately not seen it yet. I have not seen it yet, but I'm glad you enjoyed it, Toba. Okay, next up, better usernames available writes, John, you're telling me Nolan's films have sound issues? I just watched Inception at home with a soundbar. Characters talking with soundbar on level 4. Then action kicks in, and it's like the loudest jump scare ever. A little fed up with having to tweak the volume. Again, this is, unfortunately, Chris Nolan, who is one of the greatest directors of our generation. There's no doubt about it. He's one of the greatest directors working today. But one of the more frequent, constant criticisms that we see leveled at his films is his sound mix is often very much questionable. And he may want to do it for dramatic effect here and there, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is it's just really irritating to a lot of people sometimes. And by the way, that doesn't change the fact that he's like one of the greatest in the business. He is. But I do hope that he's, after all the feedback that he's hearing on Tenet, I really hope he decides to really start paying attention to sound mix. And by the way, not just paying attention to it, but bringing in somebody else to say, yeah, Chris, this needs to be higher, this needs to be lower. I really hope he does start taking other input on that. Better usernames available also writes, so I've just discovered The Boys. Hot damn. Don't like it. I don't like too much blood and guts, and it looked a little knock of superhero at first. The thought, screw it, and I binged every episode from the start up to the latest episode, and I'm addicted. What a strange, weird, but awesome show. I'm telling you what, better usernames. We live in a glorious, if you like comic book material on TV or like superhero material, we live in a glorious time. There are 3 shows in particular all running right now that are all utterly fantastic, and they're all completely different from each other. Umbrella Academy, in no particular order. Umbrella Academy, The Boys, Doom Patrol. These are 3 special shows, and they're completely different from each other, and they're all wild and bonkers, and they all go well beyond, like thematically and themes, they go well beyond the traditional superhero tropes to being actually deep and meaningful. And they're fantastic, and I'm glad you got on The Boys. If you haven't checked out Doom Patrol or Umbrella Academy, I highly recommend you check those ones out too. It is a good time to be a fan of this type of material. It is absolutely a good time to be a fan of this type of material. Okay, let's move on here. Sharan Aurora writes, "Ha! Denver exposed those damn frauds in the Clippers." Oh, I saw that today. I was busy last night binging Ted Lasso. Like, I was only going to watch one episode of Ted Lasso, and I just ended up absolutely binging it. Couldn't stop watching it. So I woke up this morning, I'm like, God, I totally forgot to check in on the Clippers score. Denver exposed those frauds to Clippers. I'm so happy the media have to eat crow after I anointed them the champs. Kawhi doesn't compare to LeBron, and I never want to hear it again. Now that I got out of the way, how you doing, John? I'm doing great. And listen, I remember at the beginning of the year, everybody laughed at me. Because as much as I love Kawhi, and especially appreciate what he did with the Toronto Raptors last year, leading the Raptors to the NBA championship, when Kawhi left, I got in these arguments with everybody. Everybody was right, saying Toronto won't even make the playoffs next year. Toronto won't even they're going to be terrible next year. Without Kawhi, they're nothing. Well, guess what? Without Kawhi, they were still one of the best teams in the league. And guess what? They went just as far in the playoffs, Game 7 of Round 2, as Kawhi did with his new team, Game 7 of Round 2. Without Kawhi, they went just as far as Kawhi did with his new team. Now, that's not for me to say Kawhi isn't great. Kawhi is great. Kawhi Leonard is great. Make no mistake about it. But my point was, people thought that Toronto was all about Kawhi. It wasn't. They have great talent. They built a great team. And they got 2 minutes away from going to the Eastern Conference Finals without Kawhi. So that was the thing. And yes, LeBron is still the best in the world. LeBron is still the best in the world. All right. Chris Daniels writes, are studios expecting theaters to stay open with no revenue? They keep delaying movies like there's no worry about theaters surviving. Hey, listen, this is one of those things where you got to understand where everybody's coming from. It is a very, very unique situation. It is a situation to which we have never had any precedents for this before. We've never had any precedents for stuff like this before. And all the studios are trying their best, other than maybe Universal, but Warner Brothers, Disney, even Paramount, they're all trying their best to get their movies out. But there are certain realities. Listen, all the theaters are in trouble. And if the theaters are in trouble, the movie industry is in trouble. Because all the money the real money in the movie industry is made in theaters. So if the theaters are in trouble, the movie industry is in trouble. Everything's, oh no, we'll just put it on streaming. And no, streaming doesn't make shit compared to the movie theaters. Doesn't make shit compared to the movie theaters. The studios all know this. The studios know it. You don't think that frickin' what's his name? The Disney film they just dropped online about the kid thief. I can't even remember the name of it now. You don't think that would have made more money in theaters? Of course it would have made more money in theaters. You don't think Mulan would have done better for them in theaters? Of course it would have done better for them in theaters. Pandemic notwithstanding. But theaters are trouble, and that means the movie industry is in trouble. But again, I don't blame any of the studios right now because it's a tough situation. What's the right thing to do? They're trying to figure it out. The theaters are trying to figure it out. The studios are trying to figure it out. There's no game map for this. It's a tough situation for everybody. All right. Final question of the day, guys, and then we'll have to pick up tomorrow. Alfredo Parra writes, "Hey, John, just got YouTube Premium, and I'm really liking it. I have YouTube Premium myself as well. How does this affect your show's ad revenue since I no longer have ads? Curious because I want to keep supporting the channel. Thanks." So what happens is, and I don't know exactly how this works, but this is the basic premise of it. YouTube knows how many people watch my videos that have YouTube Premium. And then they kick back to me a certain percentage of your YouTube Premium subscription fee. They kick my way. So like if 1,000 people who have YouTube Premium watch my show, they don't get any ads, but YouTube will then send me revenue proportionate to the number of people who have YouTube Premium that watch my show. So even though you have YouTube Premium and I get no ad revenue from you, you watching my show actually still does get me revenue from YouTube. YouTube gives me a bit of that YouTube Premium revenue that you pay for them. So it still works out for me. But thank you for asking, man. I appreciate that. Okay, listen. Upset Cutie Robert, Gary, and James, do not worry. We're going to start off tomorrow's show, the live questions part of tomorrow's show, with your questions. We're not forgetting your questions. We're not abandoning them. Yours will be first up tomorrow. We've just run out of time for now. And that is all the time we have for today, guys. Thank you so much for being here, guys, and for making the John Campea Show a part of your day. You guys can be doing anything, but you chose to spend part of your day with us, and we are very honored that you would do that. Thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett, and a special thank you to all you guys who did send in those live questions for two reasons. Number one, you gave us great fun things to talk about, but number two, you supported this channel while you did it, and all of us here, thank you very much for that. That will do it for me for now, guys. Remember to do the four important things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.